Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Links are in the description below. Please show some love of the author and me. On to the show.
Big problem. This is not something that can be said indiscriminately. For general spaceship failures, it can only be said that the performance of the spaceship is unstable, or that some performance is defective and needs maintenance. But major issues are generally related to flight safety, such as those that explode when flying, are major issues. Now Da Huang said that there is a major problem with this spaceship, which means that this spaceship is very likely to fly and explode directly. Well, then buy a fart. Buying a spaceship is used to transport goods to make money, and run conveniently and stably. Your spaceship will explode when it flies. Do you think you are buying a firework bomb to play with? The spaceship will explode while flying, and that will kill people. This Yugu is now selling this spaceship to Stardust. Isn't this just because he wants Stardust to buy it back and play with his life? Knowing this, Xingqian's complexion became a little unhappy. Wagu was introducing the spaceship, but he saw that Stardust's face was not very good looking. He thought that Stardust was not satisfied with the performance of the spaceship he introduced. So he hurriedly took Stardust to the warehouse with 170 and pointed at the huge warehouse, said to Stardust, "This spaceship is a special cargo spaceship. Look at the area of this warehouse. It can hold at least one interstellar TEU of goods. This spaceship is much larger than your small spaceship. When it comes to the cargo volume, the concept of an interstellar standard container." Xingqian is even a little annoyed. Originally, this guy wanted to sell himself a firework bomb spaceship, and wanted to send him to his death. Let's not talk about it, but this cargo warehouse is so big, he dared to lie that he could hold a standard box of goods. He was taking himself for a fool. I said, Ugu, where is the standard container that can hold a standard container in your warehouse? Do you set your own standard? The standard container in the interstellar world is 4 by 5 by 22 units. Your warehouse is at best 17 units. Tell me how to fit a 22-unit long TEU into a space of only 17 units. Come and try. Ugu originally thought that Stardust was not familiar with shipping and had no idea about interstellar standard containers, so he was bragging. Seeing that Xingqian had seen through it now, he blushed a little, but he made up for it. This spaceship can indeed hold a standard box of goods, but the length of the warehouse is really not enough. However, when loading the goods are dismantled, and the warehouse can almost hold a 78-88, even if it is almost the same. In other, it's enough to put some in the ship's warehouse. Anyway, a standard box of goods can definitely be loaded. Well, you disassembled the whole standard box of goods. Do you think the owner has no objection? Okay, even if you can pack it like this, then tell me what type of power engine this spaceship is and how much kinetic energy it can generate. After deducting the self-weight of the entire spacecraft from this kinetic energy, how much surplus can be used to dynamically transport cargo? Is there 100 units? Although I haven't calculated this kinetic energy, it should be no problem to transport more than 100 units. More than 100 units. People's standard containers are generally calculated as 300 to 500 units. What kind of standard container is your transportation volume of more than 100 units? Wagu heard that Xingqian was so familiar with the cargo standards that the sweat was dripping from his brow. But he still insisted, and said, "Then you can also transport some lighter cargo. This is a large quantity, and you can make money." After hearing what he said, Xingqian didn't bother to talk to him anymore. In order to sell the ship, this man dared to talk nonsense at this level of nonsense. Seeing that Xingqian didn't speak anymore, as if he had made it clear that he didn't want to listen to it, Ugu gritted his teeth, and said, "This ship is indeed transported less. Or I want you to get it cheaper. 12 million Lao. You can take it. The price is very affordable. Don't look at the capacity of this spaceship is less, but you have to buy a spaceship that can carry a standard box of goods. Even if it is second-hand, it will not be able to get 30 million Rals. Although this spaceship has a small capacity sum, but only 12 million Rals. The price-performance ratio is very suitable. With this amount of transportation, the second-hand spaceship only costs 12 million, which is indeed very cost-effective, if it can really fly." Wagu originally heard Xingqian say that the price-performance ratio is very good, and thought he approved of this spaceship, but when he heard the last sentence that it can really fly, he felt that it was wrong. Of course it's not right. Xingqian already knew from Daoang that this spaceship will explode when it flies up, so he still wanted to sell this spaceship when he met Ugu, so he wanted to tell Mingli. Stardust turned around and got off the spaceship, directly brought Ugu to the side of the hull, pointed to a place and asked a question. Ugu is old-fashioned. Can you tell me that such an outer shell can accelerate to the speed of light? Seeing that Stardust had found the defect of the spaceship, Yugu also gave in with a long sigh. Brother, there are indeed some problems with this hull, but it has been repaired, and there will be no troubles in general flying. Ordinary flight. If I spend tens of millions to buy a spaceship that only flies at the speed of light, in the star system, then what am I going to spend that money on? Such a spaceship can be bought for 2 to 3 million yuan, and it is still new. The spaceship performs better. If this spaceship flies at the speed of light, there may not be any problems. Wu still wanted to argue, but what Xingchen said casually made him shut up. Wu Gu is old-fashioned. If you say that there may not be any problems, then you go up to test to see for 2 laps. If there is no problem, then I will agree with what you said. HMM. Wu wouldn't dare to go on a test voyage. The spaceship's hull was obviously damaged. Although it was repaired by the shipyard, it was recently discovered that the strength of the repaired places has been greatly reduced, which is not enough for the spaceship to survive a faster-than-light voyage. If Wu went up to try it out by himself, and the spaceship disintegrated, wouldn't that mean letting him finish playing with the spaceship? Seeing that Xingchen knew all about the details of this spaceship, Wu could not deceive him anymore, so he gritted his teeth and said to Xingchen, "My brother, you have also seen the situation of this spaceship. Although there are damages on the outer shell of the spaceship, if there is a chance to repair it, the performance of this spaceship is still very good. I won't ask you for more. You only need 8.5 million RALs for this spaceship. If you buy the spaceship, as long as you find a place to repair it, it can fly for at least 20 to 30 years. The transportation volume can be used to earn back the goods bought by the ship in 1 year." Stardust cast Wu a glance, and then replied, "Find a place to fix it. Where can I find it? How can this spaceship run over? It can't fly faster than the speed of light. If it only flies at sub-light speed, it may not be able to fly for hundreds of years to a planet that can mend it, or find someone to repair it. Where is the repair shop that can repair such a gap in the hull? If this spaceship can't get through, it must be repaired by someone else's repair ship. The repair cost plus the cost of traveling so far to repair it. How much will it cost in total? Have you calculated it?" Wu nodded embarrassingly, expressing that he had counted. "Since this spaceship was entrusted to me, I have also asked someone. There is a spaceship yard that can repair the spaceship on the Milan star more than 4,700 light-years away. It costs more than 4 million RALs, and I am reluctant to spend this money." Stardust is a little speechless. "You don't want to spend 4.5. You just want me to spend it. But I also don't want to spend it. Besides, not to mention the repair cost of more than 4 million RALs. The price of this spaceship is 8.5 million RALs, which is not enough for me. I only have a little more than 5 million RALs, so I must not be able to afford it of." Seeing that Wu still wanted to work harder, Xingchen said, "This spaceship costs more than 8 million yuan to buy, and several million yuan to repair it. Even if I want to buy it, I can't buy it. I have to ask my family for their opinions. No matter how tight you chase after me, I can't buy it." Seeing that this was the case, Wu could only shut up. After Xingchen had finished resting here, he thought about setting out. Wu still didn't give up, and stood next to Xingchen's spaceship, telling Xingchen that if he buys a spaceship, he must consider his ship. Xingchen could only say that he had the opportunity to come and talk again, and then he set off to leave Lin Huangsing. After setting off from Lin Huangsing, it took Xingchen another 8 days to rush back to Dilin Daxing. Although this is the second time for Xingchen to come here, he still doesn't feel very friendly. Maybe it's because of that man. Xingchen has never been very cold towards this guy. But Xingchen came here only for a mission. How he feels about the planet doesn't affect the completion of the mission. Xingchen doesn't care about that. Stardust landed the spaceship at the docking point last time, and then asked Huala to get the hover vehicle ready. So he was ready to set off to meet that man. But before going there, Stardust also let Da Huang contact the other party. This time the number is finally not in a rejecting state. Xingchen and Ma Han made an appointment to meet at the shop they went back to, and then flew there by car. The road wasn't too far away, and after more than 20 minutes, Xingchen arrived in the urban area. And after spending some time, he found the shop where he ate last time. This time happened to be lunchtime in the afternoon. Xingchen was not polite. He ordered some food first, and then waited for the other party to come over. It's just that Stardust is hundreds of kilometers away from here, and it took 20 to 30 minutes to come here by the suspension car. But after arriving, Ma Han has not yet arrived, which is a bit impolite. This meeting place is not more than a kilometer away from Mahan's family. Even if he starts from home, he still has to walk a little more, and he should arrive within 10 minutes. But half an hour has passed. Neither Ma Han nor his cousin showed up. and Xingchen felt a little dissatisfied. 25. But even if he was dissatisfied, Xingchen didn't show it. Anyway, this job was not to earn their lao, and he had nothing to do with these two in the future, and it didn't matter if he was polite or not. Xingchen waited for more than 10 minutes. The meal was almost finished, and Mahan and his cousin arrived late, and walked slowly into the door of the shop. It's not very polite to see the other party, and he doesn't value this meeting, so there is no need for Xingchen to be too enthusiastic. When the two came to Xingchen's small dining room, Xingchen just nodded to show that he had seen the ceremony. Seeing Xingchen like this, the Man brothers and sisters were also a little bit dissatisfied, but it was a trivial matter, so they didn't get angry. They just sat heavily on the chairs, expressing their emotions. But it didn't do anything to Stardust. Xingchen took out the small box, where the sundries collected before was placed, and pushed it in front of the Man brothers and sisters. I went to the planet where the coordinates are located. There are 2 planets with living creatures. However, the overall environment is relatively dangerous. The people who came there in the early stage, you mentioned, should have encountered accidents. This is what I was on one of them. You can test the wreckage of the spaceship found on the planet to see if it is the spaceship that those people took. Mahan opened the box, dumped all the contents on the table, and then said in a cold voice, "You just take these things back. What does this prove?" Seeing that he didn't believe it, Xingchen explained, "The creatures on that planet are quite special. They can devour and corrode spaceships. When I passed by, the entire spaceship was almost devoured, even if there were some larger wreckage left, because that kind of creature gathers on the wreckage, and I can't collect it. My father's spaceship is a large spaceship, with a length of more than 40 units. If you say that a large spaceship is swallowed up, it will be swallowed up. The entire spaceship is made of various materials. Can those creatures swallow it? You have talked a little more, please." When I went, those creatures had almost swallowed the spaceship. I have left a picture. You can take a look. I don't want to look at it. You just want to get away with some junk. What kind of creature can swallow an entire spaceship? If you want to be like this, you don't want to get the rest of the money. I'll go. What does this bitch mean? Xingchen was also a little annoyed after hearing what this cousin said. Don't these two goods want to renege on their debts? I have images of the wreckage of the spaceship and that creature, including the appearance of the planet. I also have photos. I have traveled so far, so why are you talking nonsense here? No matter how far you ran, no one was rescued. So just bring these broken things back. Who knows where you went? That's right, you said you went to investigate. But just bringing back such a small amount of stuff doesn't mean it's on the spaceship we're looking for. It's not that easy for you to get the rest of the money. Han also interjected from the side. What's the rest of the money? The money I paid him before. It's good if he didn't ask him to return it. Mahan's cousin said again. Seeing that the meaning in these 2 words is that they don't want to pay the bill, Xingkong also lost his patience. Success. Since you don't want to pay the final payment, then I don't need to stay here anymore. You can wait for your family's expedition team to go there, and search again to see if you can find the spaceship. As for these fragments, if you are interested, you can go to inspect them, and if you don't want to inspect them, you can do as you like. After saying this, Xingchen got up and walked out. The Man brothers and sisters were still discussing loudly when Xingchen walked out, saying that Xingchen was too unreliable. He went there and didn't get anything useful back, and he still has the face to take the balance, which is really ridiculous. Hearing what they said, Xingchen was also a little speechless, but since he decided to leave, he didn't talk to them so much. Originally, Stardust made some investigations on the 2 planets during his trip. Those more dangerous star beasts, and those huge earth-walking beasts, all belong to the existence that can cause danger to human spaceships. If the Ma tribe decides to send an expedition spaceship team there, then the information in Xingchen's hands can be said to be very precious information. With this information, the Ma tribe's expedition team will be able to reduce the loss of a lot of spaceships and personnel. To put it bluntly, if this expedition fleet were not so careful and landed directly on the planet, once it encounters an aerial raid by the golden-striped 3-pointed star beast, the entire fleet, including the members, may be completely wiped out, 70% or more, even if they can escape the attack of the golden triangle star beast. Those stone monsters are not easy to deal with. Once they are accidentally stuck to the spaceship, the spaceship will disintegrate within 10 minutes. Xingchen remembered that when those stone monsters moved, they didn't make any noise or fluctuation. Even rhubarb couldn't detect them, let alone those people. These materials of Xingchen are so precious, it is ridiculous to think that the 2 brothers and sisters actually annoyed Xingchen because they did not want to pay the final payment of 500,000 yuan. Of course, These two may have their 203 considerations. After all, everyone's thinking channel is different. Who knows what these two think? Originally, Xingchen thought that this business would be over, so he transferred these materials to Mahan and his sister. After all, it was useless for Xingchen to keep these things by himself, and these to take it, not to mention selling it, or handing it directly to the clan. I am afraid there will be some rewards. This can also make up for the loss of the main income of the family. But it's meaningless to say these things now, and it's impossible for Stardust to be handed over to them. Although the final payment for this business has not been received, the work has been done, and Xingchen can go back to deal with Mr. Pafo. Xingchen drove to the docking point of the spaceship in a car. On the way, Xingchen also asked Da Huang to contact Master Pafo. Uncle Pafu listened to Xingchen briefly explaining the process of the matter, and then heard that the final payment had not been received. The two brothers and sisters even expressed dissatisfaction with Xingchen, and now Uncle Pafu was also angry. Of course, it is not clear in the communicator. Uncle Pafu asked Xingchen to go back and explain in detail, so he will naturally give him an explanation. Xingchen didn't care too much about these things, but naturally he couldn't go back directly after he came out. Xingchen asked Uncle Pafu if he still wanted spirit beast meat, and this time he stopped by to bring a few boxes back, which can be regarded as earning some travel expenses. Uncle Pafu naturally agreed. Xingchen has been out for a month, and there is no discount for buying spirit beast meat these days, but he spent a lot of money for nothing, so it is natural that Xingchen can take it back directly this time. So Xingchen hung up the communicator and prepared to board the spaceship to buy goods from Duo Lin Xing. Xingchen had just arrived at the docking point of the spaceship by car, and was about to be disassembled by Huala and loaded into the spaceship to prepare for departure. Dawang reported that Mahen's number had sent a signal requesting a call, and asked Xingchen how to deal with it. What about Stardust? Naturally, it is a dragon that refuses to accept blackmail. What kind of man? Thanks to himself, he has been busy with his affairs for a month, and the delayed business may have 5 or 6 orders of profit, at least nearly 5 million rals. But this time, they turned around and refused to pay the final payment of 500,000 rals with excuses such as lack of evidence, talking nonsense. How could Stardust endure this? But this is their home field after all, and the Ma tribe may have a lot of influence in the local area. Xingchen is a rookie, and he is alone, so he must have a cerebellar defect and drink 5 caddies of fake wine to go to fight with other powerful people. Naturally, Stardust would not do such an unwise behavior. At this moment, Main asked for communication again. Who knew what it was? Xingchen didn't want to stick to their affairs anymore. Anyway, Stardust has completed the task sent by Master Pafo, and the final payment for this trip has not yet been received. It would be useless for Main to play tricks at this moment, and Master Pafu is too embarrassed to ask Xingchen to make another move. Xingchen didn't bother to deal with this unreliable villain, so he just blocked him and it was over. After Huala put the car on the spaceship, Xingchen set off directly to Duo Lin Xing. The direct flight from Dillin Star to Duo Lin Xing is not too short, but it is much closer than returning to Amaya and then going to Duo Lin Xing. So Stardust naturally went directly to Duo Lin Xing. This journey is about 20 hours. Xingchen has been used to running long distances recently, but he doesn't care much about the distance. It is still the old rule. Xingchen lay down on the control chair. Start rehearsing the moves of the advanced knife technique in your mind. After rehearsing for a few hours, Xingchen was a little tired, so he stood up and moved a few times, ate a spiritual fruit, and then continued the rehearsal. By the time Duo Lin Xing arrived, Xingchen had basically completed the entire exercise of the advanced saber technique, and memorized the changes of the various saber techniques by heart. Because Xingchen only memorized the changes of the knife style, but did not actually practice the knife style, so it can only be regarded as memorized. When Xingchen returned to the martial arts hall, and had free time, he would naturally practice all these saber moves. Only then would he be able to truly learn these saber moves. Except for the temperature change on Duo Lin Xing's side, nothing else has changed much. Xingchen went to the shop selling spirit beast meat as usual. The reception here was surprised when they saw Xingchen coming over. This is because Xingchen has not come to buy goods for a month. The receptionist thought that Xingchen had skipped the order, and felt very distressed for losing Xingchen, a big customer. But at this moment, Xingchen came to buy goods again. The reception was naturally a surprise, and even more so, he rushed forward to welcome Xingchen's arrival. Xingchen was already familiar with this receptionist, so naturally he exchanged a few pleasantries. The receptionist first carefully asked why Xingchen hadn't come to take care of business recently, and if there was something wrong. Xingchen then explained that he recently went out for a long-distance job, which delayed his own business, and he would come over to buy the goods as soon as he came back. Then the receptionist asked if Xingchen was still the same when he bought the goods this time, buying 6 boxes of different kinds of spirit beast meat. Stardust's side is naturally the same as before, and Master Pafu's needs have not changed, so naturally his side has not changed either. The reception price was calculated according to the type of meat, and Xingchen paid the price. The next step is to receive the arranger to deliver goods to Stardust. In order to keep Xingchen as a customer, the receptionist specially selected the freshest spirit beast meat to load Xingchen's car. In addition to the 6 large boxes of spirit beast meat, the receptionist named Lin Ping specially brought a small box of spirit beast meat to Xingchen, which was a gift for Xingchen, who bought so many spirit beast meat. This small box of spirit beast meat was assembled from 2 types of meat, although the packaging on the outside was average, and not particularly delicate, but it didn't cost Stardust to spend, so the requirements for things that were given away for free should not be so high. Stardust was naturally happy to accept the gift, and said that he would come to visit often in the future. Both the host and the customer are very satisfied with this transaction. Next, Xingchen bought 4 small boxes of assembled spirit beast meat, this time the kind with more delicate packaging. Although Uncle Pafu didn't say in advance that he would buy this small box of meat, but based on past experience, these 4 boxes of spirit beast meat will probably be bought by him. Naturally, the remaining spiritual fruit and spiritual tea could not be left behind, so Xingchen bought some. In addition to the goods that the Budokan would ask for, Xingchen also bought a few boxes himself. After the purchase was completed, Stardust transported the goods back to the spaceship, and then rushed to Amaya Star. Nothing happened on the way back to Amaya, and Xingchen returned to the Budokan smoothly after more than 10 hours. It was late at night at the martial arts hall this time, and Xingchen didn't want to disturb the uncle's sleep time, so he could only call on the 2 little brothers, who stayed behind to guard the spaceship, and he and Hwala ran to the dormitory to rest. In the early morning of the next day, Xingchen washed up first, and then went to the open space next to the dormitory to practice kung fu and saber techniques. It's too early now, and it's not easy for Xingchen to contact Mr. Pafu. It wasn't until halfway through the morning that Xingchen asked Rhubarb to send a message to Uncle Pafu, telling him that the goods had arrived and could be shipped away. Not long after, Uncle Pafu rushed over. I haven't seen him for a month, because his style is still the same as before. The goods brought back by Stardust this time are still of the same variety, and the quantity has not changed much. Uncle Pafu naturally accepted all of them, even bought the 4 small boxes of spirit beast meat, and 4 boxes of spirit tea. The difference is that the spirit tea has been replaced with several varieties that were not bought last time. The quantity of the items did not change, nor did the total price. The uncle paid the bill according to the amount, and Xingchen made another 800,000 rows this time. After the transaction was completed, Xingchen waited for the younger brother to help the uncle load the car. Uncle Pafu, Nuo Hao, asked about Xingchen's trip for a month or so, and what Ma Han meant by refusing to pay the final payment. Xingchen told the beginning and the end of the matter, and then repeated the attitude and words of the main brothers and sisters when they returned to Dilin Daxing. Uncle Pafu was also very annoyed after hearing this. Xingchen's going here represents the meaning of the uncle. Being able to send Xingchen to help Ma Han run this trip is because the Budokan attaches great importance to Ma Han, a successful student. But the behavior shown by this main is not so authentic. While Xingchen was talking about this with Master Pafu, Instructor Dika also wandered around and turned around. Instructor Dika saw Xingchen from a distance, and he also greeted Xingchen happily. Xingchen has been away for so long, and recently the Instructor Dika wants to teach and there is no one to teach. Now that Xingchen finally came back, he is happy. Seeing Instructor Dika approaching, Xingchen stepped forward to say hello. It's been a while since he wandered outside, and among those people Xingchen met, Instructor Dika treated him the best, although he also ran on Xingchen to help find Teng Bao, which made him take some risks. But after this experience, the final income is quite good. If Xingchen finds a place to learn kung fu and saber techniques by himself, it will take a lot of time and energy. At that time, not only will it take time and energy, but I am afraid that it will also cost a lot of money. Now that Xingchen has learned these things, as long as he practices a lot and improves his proficiency in advanced saber techniques, it will be much safer to wander outside in the future. Stardust respected such a Dika instructor. Instructor Dika also knew what Xingchen was doing when he was away from home. Seeing Xingchen coming back now, he naturally wanted to ask whether the journey was smooth, how the process was, how dangerous it was, and so on. When Xingchen told Uncle Pafu what happened just now, Instructor Dika hadn't come over yet, so now he can only tell what happened again. He even said the same thing about what happened on Dylan's star later. Instructor Dika was equally annoyed after hearing this. It's just that the students are not authentic, and the instructors can't do anything here. They can only compensate for the loss of Stardust. Instructor Dika was also quite interested in Stardust's adventure on an unknown planet. After scolding Mayan a few times, he asked about Stardust's experience on that planet. When Xingchen talked about the process of 900 before, he only gave a rough outline of the experience on the planet. Mr. Pafu only knew that Xingchen had taken some risks, especially when talking about the stone monster sticking to the spaceship. Xingchen showed the place where the stone monster stuck to the two instructors to prove the degree of danger. The outer shell of the spaceship itself is made of a special alloy, which can guarantee the safety of the interior of the spaceship when it is flying faster than the speed of light. It is conceivable that this thing is strong and stable. But at this moment, the two instructors touched it with their hands, and the areas where the surface of the spaceship was glued had become a little bumpy and uneven. Comparing these places with other places that have not been glued, and hearing that the shell of the spaceship has become like this, but it took more than 10 seconds to be glued, Dika and Pafo himself are also afraid. In this case, if you dare to let these stone monsters stay for a minute or two longer, then the spaceship may not be able to fly faster than the speed of light. This time, it was Xingchen who reacted quickly and dealt with it effectively, so he escaped the catastrophe. Later, Xingchen said that, when he found the target spaceship, that spaceship had already been swallowed clean by hundreds of thousands of stone monsters. Moreover, Xingchen still has video data. When he was in Dilin Daxing, the Mayan brothers and sisters did not behave properly, so Xingchen did not leave the data. When the two instructors asked about it, Xingchen released the images. CFBF, the data images released by Stardust also include those golden striped three-pointed star beasts, as well as those who live underground. Through these materials, the two instructors knew how dangerous the planet was. After reading this material, the two instructors also felt lucky for Xingchen's good luck and alertness. What happened this time was all because the Budokan wanted to help the students, so they arranged for Xingchen to go there, and they didn't know in advance that the place they were going to was so dangerous. Stardust's errand is completely regarded as an expedition to an unknown planet, and it is also a very dangerous unknown planet. Generally, such expeditions are organized in the form of an expedition team by those masters above the 5th or 6th prefecture level, and they will go out together to investigate the situation. Even if the team members are all masters, the expedition team may suffer heavy losses, and even the entire army may be wiped out. Such expeditions generally cost tens of millions of rals. If there are more and bigger spaceships dispatched, there will be a cost of hundreds of millions. But for this kind of expedition, Xingchen went alone in a small spaceship and came back safely. The other cost was the 500,000 advance payment that Xingchen received, and in the end even the final payment was not settled. There is really no way to settle this account. In the end, the two instructors could only scold that Mayan for not acting properly. After the whole thing was told, the two instructors also understood more clearly. Uncle Pafu still needs to transport all the goods back to the warehouse, so he greeted Xingchen and left. However, before leaving, the uncle also expressed his attitude. This time, Xingchen took such a big risk, for the sake of the martial arts hall. The martial arts hall also wants to express it. In this respect, the uncle reassured Xingchen that he would not let him suffer. After Master Pafu left, Instructor Dika asked about Xingchen's cultivation. Xingchen practiced the basic knife technique and the advanced knife technique together. Instructor Dika was quite surprised that Stardust could memorize all the changes of the knife style. Other students have to memorize and be familiar with these changes and moves, which may take several months, but Xingchen had been traveling outside for the past month, so he rarely had time to practice. He can practice to the present level, and he has some skills. In the following time, under the guidance of Instructor Dika, Xingchen corrected the moves and exercises he had learned, and corrected the inappropriate parts of the practice bit by the instructor. When it was noon, Xingchen saw that the instructor was also thirsty, so he called Walla over again, and he was still here to help make tea and wash the spirit spring for service. As for the other younger brothers, they are all busy with their own work, and Xingchen is too busy practicing kung fu, so he can't take care of them. After resting for a while, Xingchen began to practice again. Do you have to practice all the time? But in the afternoon, Xingchen was practicing the proficiency of basic sword skills, but he had to stop, because Instructor Qi Lun came back to the dormitory from nowhere. When he saw Xingchen practicing, he walked over. Instructor Qi Lun saw that Xingchen was practicing kung fu here, so he asked Xingchen to demonstrate the agility he taught, to see how he learned it, and to see what was wrong in the practice, so he could point out and correct it. This is a bit embarrassing, because when Xingchen was on the spaceship, he had been learning sword skills all the time, and didn't remember much about body skills. Body skills require too much practice. If you don't actually show the movements, you won't be able to practice them at all. So up to now, Xingchen's agility has not been practiced very well. Instructor Qi Lun was immediately dissatisfied when he saw the results demonstrated by Xingchen. Before, he saw that Xingchen's basic sword skills were well practiced, and he felt that Xingchen was a young man who was willing to endure hardships, and his body skills should have been practiced to a certain level. But after a while, it's not like that at all. This kid, don't you take me seriously? The sword skills taught by that guy Dika are good, but the body skills I taught at the same time have been practiced like this. Do you think what I teach is not good? What's wrong with looking down on me? Xingchen was also sweating when Instructor Qi Lun yelled like this. I can only go forward and explain that I have been staying on the spaceship for the past month, and I have no place to practice agility. Today is the first day back to practice, and I will start practicing agility immediately. It can be practiced in a few days. Only then did Instructor Qi Lun nod his head, expressing his acceptance of Xingchen's explanation, but the movement method had to be practiced immediately. Instructor Qi Lun said, Xingchen is so proficient in sword skills now, but he hasn't started to practice body skills. It's not going to work. Obviously they are all taught at the same time. You have practiced what others taught you, but you have not practiced what I taught you. Are you looking down on me, or trying to slap me in the face? Stardust boy, you have to start practicing now. If you don't practice your body skills, you can't practice other things. I'll just watch over here. Don't try to practice other things. This matter seems to be difficult to handle. Xingchen is a little muttering here, because the Dika instructor on the side also stood up. Originally, Instructor Qi Lun taught Xingchen's body skills, and Instructor Dika didn't care, because it's not bad for a while. But Instructor Qi Lun asked Xingchen to stop practicing other things and concentrate on agility, which somewhat affected Instructor Dika's teaching progress, so he got up to compete with Qi Lun. Here, Instructor Qi Lun forced Xingchen to practice agility immediately, and he couldn't stop if he didn't practice well. Instructor Dika over there saw that the situation had changed, so he also came over and started arguing with Instructor Qi Lun. The situation is that Instructor Qi Lun wants Xingchen to practice his agility as soon as possible, but what Instructor Dika means is that the agility can be practiced, and it cannot affect the progress of my saber technique. You kill an old man. I didn't see you coming over to worry about Xingchen kid's cultivation situation a while ago. Now my son has taught me the sword technique, and you came here to find something. There is no national law like yours. After going back and forth, the two instructors were unwilling to stop their own cultivation, arguing non-stop in front of Xingchen. This quarrel also made Xingchen a little dizzy. The last two instructors probably felt that such arguing was meaningless, so they could only put aside the previous differences and divide the training time behind Xing Zhao. Right now, Xingchen has to practice sword skills for half a day, and body skills for half a day. At least he needs to be proficient in body skills. Otherwise he can't start practicing other things. Stardust has no place to express opinions on this, and can only listen to the arrangements of the two instructors. Since Xingchen had already practiced the sword technique for more than half a day in the morning, he had to practice the technique for the next half day. This is okay. Xingchen has no objection to this arrangement. Anyway, it is all about cultivation, and it is also the trump card to save his life in the future. Now that the time ratio has been discussed, Instructor Qi Lun did not leave, and directly urged Xingchen to start practicing agility. Although Xingchen hasn't practiced much in terms of body skills, he still remembers the general evolution of moves clearly. Now Instructor Qi Lun demonstrated it to Xingchen face to face, and then Xingchen followed what the instructor taught, and practiced it again and again until he used all the variations skillfully, and made these movements and the flow of breath in his body perfect. The point where you can change between thoughts. Practicing agility is also quite boring. All the changes of agility moves have to be practiced back and forth repeatedly, and Xingchen spent this afternoon bouncing back and forth in this open space. After all the postures are memorized, the floating drill will be carried out. Earth-level strength can already make the body float in the air, and low-level ones can only fly and fight in the air for a short time. However, when the rank reaches the middle and high ranks, the competition between the two sides is completely carried out in the air. At this time, the importance of body skills is particularly prominent. Stardust's current strength is very good. Although there is no formal evaluation, the first and second ranks of the Earth level are the most, and it is impossible to go straight to the third and fourth ranks. At this time, the Stardust can be made to float in the air for a while, and the same is true for fighting, it can be done for a short time. However, if he wants to practice air-body skills for a long time, Xingqian's inner breath can't keep up. So for this afternoon's agility practice, Xingqian could only practice on the ground most of the time, and after his inner breath recovered to a certain level, he would go to the air to practice for a while. In this way, under the supervision and guidance of the old instructor Qi Lun, Xingqian practiced a whole afternoon of agility. This afternoon's agility practice is much more than saber practice. Swordsmanship cultivation does not require high levels of internal energy. Even for those evolved moves, Xingqian only needs to practice the shape of the moves, and the specific internal energy is only circulating in the body. In fact, only a small amount of energy is lost outside the body part. The body method is different. After the stardust floats in the air, the inner breath must be circulating and passing away without stopping. The total amount of internal energy itself is not too much, so once it passes away, Xingqian can't practice a few times in the air, whether it is body skills or sword moves. Instructor Qi Lun is also very good at teaching agility. The total amount of internal energy of stardust is not high, but there are teaching methods that are not high. Instructor Qi Lun has estimated the total amount of internal energy of stardust. Every time he floats in the air, Xingqian can consume all of his internal energy, and then return to the ground to practice other movements. This kind of training method also made Xingqian complain endlessly, but he didn't dare to really cry out. Xingqian also didn't want to miss this opportunity to learn, and he had spent half his life looking for Tengbao to get such an opportunity to be taught. If he angered the instructor because he was afraid of suffering, and taught less content, it would be Xingqian's own fault. The afternoon passed like this, and when it was time for dinner, Xingqian invited the two instructors to have dinner together. Anyway, this time Xingqian brought back a small box of spirit beast meat, plus the rest of the small box of meat from a month ago. It is enough to treat the two instructors to a dozen meals. It's just that Stardust side dishes are all meat dishes, and there are plenty of spiritual fruits, but they haven't had time to buy side dishes yet. Xingqian then thought about asking the younger brothers to go to the Vine Mountain by the lake to pick some spiritual herbs, and the like to serve as side dishes. However, Instructor Dika raised his eyebrows when he heard Xingqian's arrangement, and said, "Xingqian boy, why do you let the robot pick those wild things? Although those spiritual herbs can be eaten and used as medicine, they don't taste very good. Okay, why don't you use your own food? Are you thinking about selling it for money or something? You're only short of money." These words of Instructor Dika made Xingqian a little puzzled. What do you mean I have vegetables? If I have vegetables, I still use them and ask my younger brothers to pick grass. Seeing Xingqian's expression, Instructor Dika didn't say a word, and pointed in the direction with his hand, letting Xingqian take a look. Xingqian felt strange, so he walked towards the direction pointed by Instructor Dika. Instructor Qi Lun didn't know much about these things, so when he saw Xingqian go to take a look, he went over to take a look to see what was going on. Instructor Dika was uncomfortable, staying here alone, so he went along with him. Xingqian went to the field and took a look. Oh, what a huge vegetable field. This is an open space next to the dormitory area, and it is all earthy ground without stones. It used to be covered with large and small vines and other plants. Needless to say how dense it was, but it took a lot of energy from Xingqian's younger brother to clean it up. After it was cleaned up, because Stardust had to arrange for the younger brothers to clean up the more peripheral areas, so there was no extra management here. Before Xingqian went to the mission, he arranged for the two younger brothers, who stayed behind to finish the cleanup mission, sort out the land here, and then prepare to grow vegetables. Ask for flowers. Xingqian remembered that he also bought a fully functional farming machine at that time, which was very expensive. When I left, there was no vegetable planting here yet, but now Xingqian stood on the edge of the field and looked over. It looked like hundreds of acres of vegetables of various colors were growing well. Hundreds of acres of vegetables. Xingqian arranged for the younger brothers to grow vegetables, and it was only for himself to eat. At that time, he asked Huala and the others to tidy up about 20 to 30 acres of land. Such a large vegetable field should be enough for several people to eat. At that time, I wanted to plant a vegetable field for dozens of people to eat, mainly because I was afraid that Uncle Pafu would come over temporarily and do something wrong. If he really came and said that the Budokan was used for a banquet, it was possible to take it all away. If you plant 20 or 30 mu of land here, you will definitely be rich enough to hold a banquet, so naturally you are not afraid of the misfortune of the uncle. But at this moment, Stardust took a look, and hundreds of acres of vegetables were growing extremely vigorously, and the land that had been grown and maintained by vines for a long time was called fertile. Feeding these later planted vegetables is crazy. It is probably because these vegetables were not planted at the same time, so there are some differences in height, but this can also ensure that there are always vegetables that are in season. Xingqian looked at such a large vegetable field. I was also a little speechless at 10 o'clock. How many caddies of vegetables have to be produced in a day, and there are only 3 or 5 people eating here. Even if they only pick the most tender part of each vegetable, they can't finish it. Instructor Dika stood beside Xingqian and said aloud, "You grow all these vegetables, and you only think about how to sell them for money. What's the matter with us, two old guys who want to eat and only eat grass?" Instructor Qi Lun didn't dislike anything, but said with emotion, "A while ago, I found out that there are a lot of vegetables growing here. I thought it was pafu from the restaurant of the Bidokan. The land was cleared out for Evrion's welfare. It turned out that Stardust Boy planted it here. There are a lot of these lands. It's very suitable to sell them for money." After hearing what the two instructors said, Xingqian could only explain a little or two aloud. "I really don't know about this land. When I left before, I arranged for robots to clean it up and prepare to grow vegetables, but I only wanted to plant a piece of land that would be enough to eat. Who would have thought that these two robots would be so diligent and direct? After clearing out such a large area, and all of them have been planted, there are so many old and various vegetables. I am afraid that there will be many elders in a few days, and they have to be eaten as soon as possible." After hearing what Xingqian said, Instructor Dika didn't say anything more. What he said before was just a joke. Now there are fresh vegetables. These are fresh enough. Dig them out here, and they will be on the table in a few minutes. Can they not be fresh? Xingqian arranged for the other younger brothers to bring some vegetables, while Huala cleaned up the vegetables and spirit beast meat in the special kitchen of the dormitory, and then arranged for dinner. The two instructors were very satisfied with this meal, especially the taste of the fresh vegetables was excellent, and the spirit beast meat brought this time was also extremely delicious. It's so fresh that it's 10 yuan. After eating this dinner that satisfied the three of them, the two instructors went back to rest and prepared to practice Stardust tomorrow. Xingqian also asked the younger brothers to tidy up and go to the side to rest first. It's still early, so it's not suitable for sleeping. It's just that Xingqian has been bouncing around and practicing agility throughout the day, and he really doesn't have the energy to go out to digest food. So Xingqian took an inventory of his recent gains in the room. Before going to the Dylan Star, Stardust saved about 4 million rals. Afterwards, although I received an advance payment of 500,000 rals from the Mayan brothers and sisters, I spent a lot of energy columns and various supplies in the later stage, and the money I got in the bag in the end was not much, about 20 or less. Look. Later, Xingqian ran around the 2 unknown planets, and finally walked away with some meteorites and a small spiritual vein. These 2 items helped Stardust exchange for more than 1 million rals. Although Xing 283 Chen didn't receive the final payment on the return trip, Lin Xing bought a batch of goods in the past and sold them to Uncle Pafu, earning 800,000 luls. With the addition of these numbers, Xingqian's current net worth has also risen to around 6 million. This amount of money is quite a lot, but Xingqian hasn't spent much recently, so he just put the money in Dawang's space and didn't care about it anymore. Stardust still has some stocks of spirit fruit and spirit beast meat, which are all stored for eating recently. With these things, they should not eat less in the next 7 or 8 days. Of course, I can't wait until the end of the meal. Master Pafu is afraid that after 2 or 3 days, he will find Xingqian to buy some, and Xingqian will buy some new ones back at that time. In addition to these things, Stardust also has the same harvest from missions, and it is a big harvest. That's the 3 pieces of metal. This is a part of a weapon set. Although Stardust did not find its other parts later, these 3 pieces should be worth some money. Xingqian took the 3 pieces of metal out of Rubberb's space, because the 3 pieces of metal were surrounded by sharp blades. So Xingqian put 2 pieces on the table, and only took 1 piece to look up and down. Such a piece of metal flake has a black-gray metal texture all over it, but in this gray-black background, there are still things that look like patterns. But the pattern is too complicated, and Stardust has never learned it before, so it can only be estimated that this pattern has a certain purpose. Of course, this is just an estimate. If you want Xingqian to talk about the function of this thing, Xingqian can't say 1, 2, 3. Apart from these things that look like patterns, this piece of metal has no other characteristics. When Xingqian found these 3 pieces of metal, they should have been buried under the gravel for more than 100 years. But now Xingqian carefully inspected the metal pieces, but did not find any traces of corrosion and oxidation. The quality of this metal is very good. After so long tossing, it has not been damaged. This is also good. If there is a chance to sell this thing, the price of a weapon in good condition will naturally be even better. Stardust put down the metal piece in his hand, ready to pick up another piece of metal to check. Although these 3 pieces of metal are all the same in length, Stardust still needs to check each of them. If any piece is different, maybe there is something to discover. But just when Xingqian put down the piece of metal and was about to move his hand to the other piece of metal, Xingqian's eyes turned to the other piece of metal at this time, and what he wanted in his heart was to pick up this piece of metal. At this time, before Xingqian's hand touched the piece of metal, he suddenly jumped. Yes, it was a sudden jump, but the range of the jump was not large, at most only 1 or 2 centimeters in height. This time, Xingqian was quite frightened. This time, Xingqian was alone in the room. Although his younger brothers were there, they were all robots, and they were motionless when they were resting next to him. In other words, only Xingqian can move in this room. It's such a time, under such circumstances, this piece of metal didn't let Xingqian touch it, and I suddenly moved. Don't you think Xingqian can't be startled? Shocked, Xingqian used his movement skills and jumped out of the room in a jerk. This reaction was very quick, and I am afraid that the results of this day's agility training were all condensed in one place. But Stardust jumped out of the room, but did not wait for the next change of the metal piece. After that piece of metal jumped for a while, it still lay quietly on the table, and the other 2 pieces of metal also looked the same. Neither of them moved. What does this mean? Is this piece of metal a fraud? But this thing is not a living body. There is no such thing as a fraud. Or is it the pile of bones found when digging the metal sheet? There were some biological ghosts left behind, and now they are hiding in the metal sheet, and they just wanted to sneak attack Stardust. But that thing only jumped for a while, and it didn't have any attack power. Is this just for fun? Xingqian didn't want to understand what was going on, so I asked Rhubarb to carefully investigate the situation in the house to see if there were any abnormal energy fluctuations. Stardust has never heard of any ghosts here, and he doesn't know if there are really no ghosts here, or there are other ways to deal with it, so that ordinary people don't care about it. However, after a few rounds of investigations by Rhubarb, nothing unusual was found. Only then did Xingqian return to the house, and took a few glances at the metal sheet from a distance. There is still no movement, as if all the energy was consumed in the previous jump, and it will be completely out of power. Well, I was really scared for nothing. Stardust returned to the table, did not touch the metal pieces with his hands, just let them be placed on the table, and then looked directly. The 3 pieces of metal were the same as before, nothing happened, and even their appearance didn't change. Xingqian was still suspicious here, but Rhubarb said, "Master, there are no other creatures in this room, and there is no fluctuation of alien energy. The metal vibration just now, could it be you, the Master, who moved it yourself? This piece of metal should be controlled by the controller and then fly out to hurt people. The controller is a human being, and you, the Master, are also human, so it is possible to control it? It is true that I am a human being, but this thing has to be used by a special controller. Without the ability of a controller, it is impossible to use it. But just now the thing vibrated. What does this mean? Could it be that I induced it myself? Does this mean that I also have the ability to control the teacher? However, it is extremely difficult to find a master, and maybe 1 out of hundreds of thousands of people may not be able to emerge at 3.8. Are you the lucky one? Xingqian had this conjecture in his heart, but how can he verify it? The probability of masters appearing is too low, and it is impossible for common people to know how to verify whether they have this talent, and the same is true for Stardust. It was Rhubarb who made a suggestion, that is, if the Stardust is still the same as it was just now, if it can move the metal piece again, it will be verified. This is an idea, although this method is not too scientific, but there is no other way to verify this, so I can only try it. Do whatever you want. Xingqian sat at the table and began to exert energy against the metal plate. However, he held his breath again, stared with wide eyes angrily, and stared with all his strength, but the 3 pieces of metal did not move or change. What does this mean? These 3 pieces of metal kept Xingqian busy for an hour, but he didn't figure out what the mystery was. The previous metal plate vibrated, and since then, there has been no movement. Xingqian was so busy that he didn't find anything useful. Go to bed first. It seems that this thing is not so easy to fix. Put these 3 pieces of metal into the space of Rhubarb as they were, and then Xingdu settled down and went to bed to rest. Stardust had a deep rest that night, and his whole body was considered to have had enough rest. After getting up the next day, Xingqian washed up and started another day of cultivation. According to the agreement between Instructor Dika and Instructor Killen, Xingqian should practice sword skills in the morning. However, this static and dynamic exercise is also very important. It is related to the progress of Xingqian's breath cultivation, so Xingqian got up earlier, and practiced the static and dynamic exercise first. After practicing a set of exercises, Xingchen began to practice saber techniques. For the practice of saber techniques, Instructor Dika also made a special practice plan and arranged for Xingchen's half-day time to be full. Stardust only needs to practice strictly according to Instructor Dika's schedule. After Xingchen practiced for an hour, Instructor Dika also came back from the outside. Instructor Dika usually gets up very early, but when he came to Xingchen, it was around this time, and I don't know where he went to play during the previous period. If the instructor doesn't say anything, Xingchen won't ask. It's the best of benevolence for someone to teach him his homework. If Xingchen still cares about where others went in the morning, what are you doing? Instructor Dika doesn't know what to think. Stardust naturally wouldn't do such a thing. After Instructor Dika came over, he sat at a stone table beside him, drank spiritual tea and ate spiritual fruit, and then supervised Xingchen's exercises. In fact, now Xingchen's saber technique training doesn't need the Instructor Dika to watch from the sidelines. Xingchen himself is more conscious, and now Xingchen memorizes the various moves of the saber technique by heart. After these 2 days of actual practice, Xingchen's basic saber technique and advanced saber technique can be regarded as a master's match. However, Dika's instructors also have relatively high requirements. Although Xingchen practiced well, wouldn't he be able to practice even better? It is natural to ask Gaoli to make progress, so the Instructor Dika will still teach strictly from the sidelines. Here, Xingchen was practicing vigorously, and Uncle Pafu drove over from a distance. As soon as the car reached the open space on Xingchen's side, Emperor Pafu jumped out of the car. Hey, Uncle is in good spirits today, but something is not quite right. Before Xingchen could stop practicing his sword skills to greet the uncle ran to sit next to Instructor Dika, and then started talking to Instructor Dika. You don't know, I was so angry this morning. Didn't Stardust Boy go on a long trip for the Ma tribe a few days ago, and he didn't even receive the final payment? And the other party was not polite. Forget it. Just go back to the Bilkin to make up for Stardust Boy. But in the morning, Mayan from the Ma tribe sent me a message. They said that they wanted information about Stardust going to that planet. They wanted to use this to determine whether Stardust had been there. If he had, just give the rest of the final payment to Xingchen, which is considered to be in accordance with the agreement. When Instructor Dika heard this, he couldn't help but glanced at Pafu and said, I can smell the idea here. You shouldn't give the information that Stardust let you see to the Ma tribe. That's too careless. Uncle Pafu said angrily, am I the kind of fool who is easy to fool? They are so careful that they can't hide it from me. I run in the market every day, and I haven't seen any roads that can make these words fool me. It's fine if you didn't give them the information. That place is extremely dangerous. I don't need to say much about the value of these materials. You know the value of these materials. Boy Stardust risked his life to get this first-hand thing. If it was so easy to be, it would be too bad for them to get it. That's natural. Boy Stardust ran this errand this time, and the Bilkin didn't figure out the situation, so he took the risk. How could I let someone take away the information so easily? I read the news in the morning, and I rejected the other party directly, but I don't think they will give up easily. If you can't wait for these 2 days, you will have to find some trouble. You should pay more attention here, Stardust Boy. This is inside the martial arts hall. It's okay if they want to make trouble. It's not free for me and Chi Lun to live here. As long as Stardust Boy doesn't go out recently, it will be fine. Xingchen has just practiced at the end of the meeting, and he can rest for a while, so he came over to drink tea and say hello to Master Pafu by the way. However, after listening to the conversation between Uncle Pafu and Instructor Dika, there was also his own business, so he asked what was going on. Master Pafu told the story again. Oh, it's still about the Ma tribe. This matter is endless, isn't it? Before the task was completed, the main brothers and sisters made excuses and didn't pay the final payment. Xingchen didn't care about it. It was only 500,000 yuan. But according to this meaning, the other party still wants to ask for these materials, in the name of verifying whether the Stardust mission is completed or not. This is really treating Xingdust as a fool. That man had contacted Xingchen when Xingchen set off from Dillin Daxing, but Xingchen rejected him and blocked him. It seems that the other party had this plan at that time. Fortunately, Xingchen was decisive enough at that time, so he just flashed away. Otherwise, if he really stayed there, the other party might have left with these materials, and then Xingchen, a person who had been there once, might be detained as a guide and so on were forced to go there again. As far as the virtue of the Ma tribe is concerned, they can use any kind of tricks. If Xingchen goes to that unknown planet again, he might be used as cannon fodder. Instructor Dika patted Xingchen's shoulder and said with a smile, "Don't worry, it's just a trivial matter. Your adventure over there is arranged by the Budokan. If there are any variables in it, the Budokan will naturally support you. It's okay if those people don't come, but when they come, we have to give them something to look at. It's really like our martial arts gym is free. Stardust shook his head and said, I don't care, even if the Ma tribe is powerful. It means that the planets near them can be stronger. If I go to a planet farther away, can they still chase me there? There's no need for you to run away. We old guys are still standing by. When they really come over there, they will naturally help you out. It feels good to be covered by someone. Xingqian nodded to show that he understood, and went on to practice the sword technique. Uncle Pa Fu drank tea and ate his spiritual fruits here, and then drove away. Anyway, he explained the matter clearly to Xingqian, and he can arrange it as he wants at that time. In a word, he can't let the Budokan suffer, and Xingboy can't let Xingxi suffer. When Stardust practiced until noon, he could rest for a while. Xingqian came over to the stone table, first took a sip of tea, and then took out the 3 metal pieces. Instructor Dika, I found these 3 pieces of metal, from that unknown planet. I know that this thing is a component of a set of weapons, but I don't know too much about the specific circumstances. Instructor, you are well informed. Have you ever seen such a weapon? Instructor Dika looked at the metal sheet that Xingqian placed on the table, and took a special piece of metal in his hand for a closer look. This thing is a weapon used by masters. It takes many pieces to form a complete set of weapons to have the greatest power. You only have 3 here, so I'm afraid it won't be easy to deal with. If it is a complete set of weapons, maybe you can find a place to sell them at a high price. You only have 3 pieces, and it is not easy for others to match them. I searched all over that place, and only found these 3 items. I didn't think there were any more. However, last night, when I took out 167 and took a closer look, before I could touch them with my hands, a piece of metal moved. Does this mean that I also have the ability to control the master? Instructor Dika glanced at Xingqian and saw that he didn't seem to be talking nonsense. So he thought for a while before he said, the chances of a controller appearing are extremely rare, and there hasn't been a controller appearing in Amy's side for at least 100 years. You said that the metal piece was not touched by the hand yesterday, and it moved by itself. I can't say whether this is the ability of the controller. Next, Instructor Dika told Xingqian about the grand occasion of the appearance of a controller on Amaya 100 years ago. I listened to the Stardust of this period of history with gusto, but after listening to it, Instructor Dika still couldn't confirm whether the situation that Xingqian encountered was the Master's awakening ability, because Xingdust moved the metal piece last night, and it only moved a little bit. Let him try it again, but he still can't reproduce the scene at that time. So the Instructor Dika is not optimistic about whether Stardust will awaken the ability. However, Instructor Dika was fine, so he went to the Budokan's information Curry to collect the Master's information, as well as the teaching materials used by the Master's apprentices when they were studying in the Budokan on Amaya. All martial arts schools have these materials. Although the controller apprentice was studying in another martial arts gym, the rest of the martial arts gyms also felt that some controller apprentices might be discovered in their own martial arts gym in the future. What should I do if I run to another house? It will be a big loss. So each family prepared a copy of these materials. But later no master apprentice was discovered, and these materials were useless. Now that Xingqian is useful, Dika Church went to take a copy of these materials and hand them over to Xingqian. Although these materials are complete, no one has taught them to the master apprentices, so Xingqian can only figure them out by himself. Xingqian got these materials, but he didn't have time to deal with them this time. So he asked Huala to put them in the dormitory first, and then go to take a closer look at night. At noon, Xingqian had already rested, and he had finished asking about mastering the master's weapons, and then he had to continue practicing sword skills. However, you can only practice sword skills for a while. According to the agreement between Instructor Dika and Instructor Qi Lun, after noon, Xingqian has to practice body skills. Before Instructor Qi Lun came over, Instructor Dika used this time to force Xingqian to practice saber techniques for a while. Stardust can practice any kind, and at the end of the practice, it will increase its own experience points. So continue to practice now. After half an hour passed, Instructor Qi Lun came over from a distance, and when Instructor Dika saw it, he called Xingqian to practice agility immediately. Don't make Instructor Qi Lun wait in a hurry. Xingqian couldn't talk back to Instructor Dika, so he could only obediently start practicing agility. About 1 afternoon was enough time for Xingqian to keep up with the progress of the upper body method teaching, so Instructor Qi Lun pretended not to see Instructor Dika's small movements, and just stood aside to correct Xingqian's movements. So this afternoon, Stardust spent the rest of the day bouncing around, and flying around in the air. During the break, Instructor Dika also told Instructor Chi Lun about the adventure of the Ma tribe, and the fact that the Ma tribe wanted to take advantage of the Stardust adventure materials. Instructor Dika also explained it in detail. Instructor Chi Lun was equally annoyed after hearing this. That man had gained the wrath of another instructor. It's about Xingchen boy. Instructor Chi Lun agreed to help support the situation without thinking about it, and of course he would not be ambiguous when he did it. You must know that this is a martial arts school. If someone came to show weakness, that would be a strange story. When it was time for dinner, Xingchen naturally invited 2 more instructors to dinner. Regarding the meal, the 2 instructors would not find any reason to refuse. Stardust side is a large vegetable field. The output of this vegetable field is not to mention 2 or 3 people. Even if 200 or 300 people go to eat, I am afraid that they will not be able to eat at all. Naturally, there is nothing on the instructor's side psychological burden. Naturally, both the host and guest were satisfied with this meal. A cup of tea after dinner, and then the instructor went back to his side to rest. Xingchen was still the same as last night, too tired to go out to digest food, so he brought over the materials of those controllers to look through. These materials are very comprehensive, not only including the origin of the master, the introduction of various abilities, but also the types of weapons usually used, and various training methods to enhance the master's ability. These methods include meditation, drug stimulation, external exercise, and so on. In addition, the master's training direction is not the same as what Xingchen imagined. In addition to using special custom weapons, most masters also practice agility to avoid the attacks of other opponents. It's normal to think about it. Ordinary monks use various weapons to attack. Cultivator who cultivates his body is naturally much stronger in using weapons than a master. If you let a master with weaker physical strength compete with common monks, isn't that stupid? The power of the master comes from the set of dozens of small weapons. Using this set of weapons to deal with large groups of enemies is what the master should do. However, the more enemies there are, the more attacks the controllers will suffer, so practicing better agility to avoid damage is their training direction. I like this point. Other things don't matter. This agility still needs to be practiced well. At least if you can't fight, you can run. The agility in the data is quite clever, although it is not as good as the advanced taught by Instructor Chi Lun, but it is better than the complete set. There is no shortage of moves. However, Xingchen is still practicing the agility taught by Instructor Chi Lun recently, and it is not easy to change it at this time. So as not to anger Instructor Chi Lun and cause unnecessary trouble, there is no need to change the body method. The rest is how to enhance the master's ability. Stardust searched through the entire information and found that the method recommended above is meditation. When it comes to meditation, Stardust has some impressions. When he was on Earth, there were introductions to meditation in various cultivation methods. Although he didn't know about these at the time, judging from his experience, meditation is indeed helpful in enhancing mental strength. Moreover, Instructor Dika also said in his teaching that although common monks don't need to specially practice formulas to increase their mental power, monks with strong enough mental power also have some benefits in cultivation. In addition, during adventures, monks with strong spiritual power can also predict in advance or make the most correct judgments about sudden dangers. Anyway, those who can survive to the end in dangerous places, except for those guys whose luck value exceeds the standard, are the monks with strong mental power. From this point of view, regardless of whether Xingchen has awakened the ability to control the master, this meditation can be cultivated. In this case, Xingchen opened the meditation teaching materials and flipped through the pages. This teaching material explains meditation in great detail. Not only there are various ways to achieve tranquility, but also how the breath in the body works. Meditation. Naturally you have to calm down and think. However, people's minds are moving, especially children who are still young, and their minds are uncertain, so naturally they can't sit still. This textbook describes various methods and medicines for children to calm down. Of course, Xingchen is not young now, so he doesn't need these methods. He just writes down some useful things. There are also the medicines mentioned in the materials. After thinking about it, I know that they are not very reliable. Letting children take medicine to calm down may still be harmful. Xingchen remembered that young children should not take sedative drugs, as they would damage brain cells. I just don't know if the medicine here has fewer side effects, so it can be used. But these bird matters that have nothing to do with Stardust. Don't worry about him. What Xingchen mainly wrote down was the movement method and path of the breath in his body. In addition, he also had to memorize the various points of meditation. In the state of meditation, rhubarb had better not make a sound, Otherwise it would really destroy Xingchen's meditation mood. Rhubarb couldn't remind him during meditation, so these materials can only be memorized by Xingchen himself. After memorizing all the useful information, Xingchen adjusted his posture and began to meditate for the first time. It doesn't seem so easy. According to the instruction in the materials, Xingchen sat quietly step by step, moved his breath, and sank his thoughts into his heart. But it was useless. Xingchen failed to enter the state of meditation. Then try again. Just like that, Xingchen tossed and tossed several times, but also failed to enter the meditation state. There is no rush for this cultivation, so Xingchen had no choice but to stop. These materials also include an introduction to the master's weapons. However, the weapons mentioned in the introduction are all complete sets, although each set of weapons includes dozens of accessories. In fact, the loyalty that needs to be carefully recognized and raised by the master is just the core component. That's right. The master's weapons all need to recognize the master and carry them with them at all times, and use breath to assimilate them. If there is no such step, then if you encounter an opponent who is also a controller, as soon as the weapons of both sides approach each other, they will only be directly collected by the opponent. At that time, the weapons of both sides will not be able to hurt the other side, so Zhou Neng can pull out his strength and chop. Knowing this, Xingchen had some ideas. The 3 pieces of metal in my hand are naturally the master's weapon. Although it is not complete and cannot be recognized as the master, it can be directly controlled, as long as they don't run into other controllers. These 3 pieces of metal will naturally not be taken away by anyone. But if you want to control these 3 pieces of metal smoothly, you have to warm them up. Of course, the premise of these actions is that Xingchen does have the ability to control the master. It's just that there is no place to evaluate whether Xingchen has this ability right now, and Xingchen can only plan as if he has this ability. Then, Zhao Hao will come to Xingchen to do something, and that is to warm and nourish these 3 pieces of metal. Xingchen thought for a long time how to warm and nourish. This thing has to be placed next to his body, so that it can assimilate with his breath. It's just that there are sharp blades around this thing. If it is tied directly to the body, as long as it moves a little bit violently, it may cause the metal piece to cut off pieces of meat. For the sake of safety, Xingdu can only put these 3 pieces of metal on his arm. There is a rhubarb gauntlet on the arm, and these 3 pieces of metal are not too big, so they can be inserted into the gap of the rhubarb gauntlet. In this way, the 3 pieces of metal can be attached to the arm. On the outside of the metal sheet, rhubarb could be fixed with a glove strap, and Xingchen found another strap to wrap the metal sheet several times and tie it up. Now I can sleep without worry. Stardust has been tossing around for so long, and it's getting late, so he can only sleep first. And the matter of meditation will be settled tomorrow. As long as he meditates a lot, there is always a chance to enter that state. The 3 pieces of metal were attached to Xingchen's arm, and fell asleep together with him. Anyway, the longer it is warmed, the better the effect will be naturally. Stardust will be warmed day and night for the best results. Xingchen began to warm up the 3 pieces of metal, but it was still a bit uncomfortable to tie a few pieces on his arm. Fortunately, Xingchen cultivated a relatively strong adaptability since he was a child, so he would not be unable to sleep. The night passed, but the metal plate on the arm didn't change much. It seemed that it could be warmed up like this, and it wouldn't scratch myself in the middle of the night. In this case, Xingchen is also relieved a lot. The schedule during the day was similar to that of the previous day. Xingchen still washed up, and then went outside to practice on the flat ground. Among the few younger brothers, Hula is serving here at Xingchen. Anyway, they have to do everything from making tea and washing spiritual fruits, and the rest of the younger brothers have gone to level the land to grow vegetables. It seems that they are more enthusiastic about growing vegetables than Xingchen himself. Anyway, there is nothing else to be busy here, so Stardust let them go. This dish is also very important. It is related to the quality of the side dishes for every dinner. Although there are more plants, this is also less strong. Xingchen practiced in the open space. First, he did the dynamic and static exercises to enhance his internal energy level, and then started to practice the advanced saber technique. Not long after the practice started, Instructor Dika wandered back from the outside again. But Xingchen was practicing. Instructor Dika didn't bother him, but walked skillfully to the stone table and began to drink spiritual tea. After Xingchen practiced for a long time, Instructor Dika walked aside and pointed out the slightly deviated movements that Xingchen practiced just now. The whole morning passed like this. When it was time for a lunch break, Uncle Pa Fu drove over and brought a message. Woi Stardust. That Ma Han brought 3 elders of the Ma tribe to the martial arts hall, and said he wanted to ask you for something. just contacted me and asked me to ask you out to meet. What do you think? I'm talking about Pafu. Just refuse over there. Why bother with them? Stardust Boy is practicing Kung Fu, so I don't have time to talk to them. I thought so too. But the other party came with an Earth level 6th level, and 2 5th level ones, and their skills are good. This time they came here, and they seemed to be determined to win. I was worried that I would refuse directly, and they would come to Xingchen. If you start your hands, you will hurt Kid Stardust. From this point of view, let's get all the people to negotiate with them, so that we don't have to worry about anything later. Whether the Stardust Boy needs to show up, let's talk about it. If the Stardust Boy doesn't show up, they won't be able to find anyone, and they won't be able to make money. In this way, it's not so easy for the Ma tribe gangsters to take advantage of the goods here. Boy Stardust goes out to take risks this time. Anyway, it can't be cheap. If the Ma tribe people want information, they have to do it ruthlessly. There is no way to bleed back. Master Pafu, then I will go to other places first, and come back after the people of the Ma tribe leave. Since you want to go out, why don't you just go buy some? Anyway, the spirit beast meat over there in the dining hall is almost finished, so it's time to buy some. You happen to go in. Success, Master Pafu. Then I'll set off now. After the discussion was over, Xingkong took the 3 little ones with him. Pafu and Dika found a few more instructors, and invited people from the Mar tribe to start negotiations. It's not unusual for Xingchen to buy goods, but this time, it happened to be night over there, and he had to stay overnight before he could go shopping. Xingchen then went to the hotel where he stayed before and got a room. This place is still the same. The place where Xingchen lives still has no place to wash, so he can only take care of it briefly, and prepare to rest. But before going to bed, Xingchen was not very tired, so he practiced some kind of meditation. This time, Xingchen didn't know what was going on, so he entered the meditation state very easily. After entering this state, Xingchen's whole body is in a mode of half thinking, half sleeping. But when Xingchen realized that he seemed to have entered a state of meditation, Xingchen withdrew from this mode again, and the whole person regained consciousness. Oh, it seems that in this state, I can't think actively, I can't have any thoughts. I can only maintain the state of not thinking, not moving into tranquility. Having gained experience this time, Xingchen calmed down his mind first, and then tried to enter that meditative state again. After trying 2 or 3 times, Xingdust entered the state of meditation again. After trying 2 or 3 times, Xingdust entered the state of meditation again. This time Xingchen didn't pay too much attention to it, and kept a quiet mind, thinking about nothing, and not paying attention to anything. Gradually, Stardust fell asleep. Early the next morning, Xingchen got up from the bed, also a little dazed. Could it be that when the controller is meditating, will he fall asleep? Probably not. But yesterday's meditation should have been an hour or so. I don't know if it has any effect. Anyway, it's okay. Xingchen took the 3 metal pieces off his arm, and put them on the table. These 3 pieces of metal have been warmed for 2 days, and I don't know if there is any change. In the controller materials that Xingchen got, there are also introductions on how to use weapons. Xingchen used his own consciousness to touch the metal piece according to the materials and textbooks. According to the materials, Xingchen doesn't know how to touch with his consciousness, but he also needs to think about it. Just when Xingchen put his mind on the metal sheet, one of the 3 metal sheets, the one on which Xingchen's attention fell, moved slightly again. This time Xingchen was not frightened, after all. This time Xingchen took the initiative to touch the metal piece with his consciousness to cause the movement. The piece of metal moved just for a moment, and Xingchen was overjoyed. It seems that I really have the ability to control the teacher. After the metal piece moved, Xingchen continued to try. From the beginning, it was just shaking slightly, and later the metal piece was able to float and move. Xingdust used his consciousness to move the metal piece back and forth to change the direction, and he had a lot of fun, playing for a while. But soon, Xingchen felt that his consciousness was a little sluggish, as if his spirit was also a little tired. This is mental exhaustion. Stardust hastily stopped the training of moving metal pieces. Although Xingchen has no common sense in this area before, there are many introductions in the materials, which will be verified by Xingchen's experimental results. It's just that this meeting has indeed consumed a lot of energy, and Xingchen feels a little flat in front of him. According to the information, in such a situation, it is still necessary to rely on meditation to recover. So Xingchen opened his posture, and entered the state of meditation again. The meditation effect this time was even more ideal, and Xingchen didn't fall asleep. After waiting for 2 or 3 hours, Xingchen automatically retreated from this thinking state. After the meditation was over, Xingchen sensed his current physical condition. That's great. All the mental power has been recovered. It seems that the excessive consumption of mental power before did not have any impact on myself. Next, Xingchen continued to practice using his mind to move the metal piece. This time he didn't move around like before, but strictly followed the practice procedures recorded in the master's study materials, step by step, laying the foundation of the master. Be realistic. The effect of this kind of practice is very obvious. Xingdust quickly mastered the knack of moving the metal piece. Of course, this kind of practice is only the most primary. Next, Stardust has to practice how to control 2 or even 3 pieces of metal to move at the same time. However, Xingchen's practice was soon interrupted. The receptionist from the hotel began knocking on the door. The rent period of the room Xingchen lived in was up. If you want to live, you need to pay an additional fee. The hotel room that Xingchen stayed in expired, and the hotel receptionist knocked on the door to ask if he needed to extend his stay. With such an interruption, Xingchen stopped the action of manipulating the metal piece. This hotel is not expensive, and it doesn't cost much to live in. It's just that I came here this time to purchase goods, so it's not a problem to just stay in this hotel. The cultivation of a master can't be practiced in a short time, so it's not very interesting to spend it here. It's better to buy the goods and go back to the dormitory to practice. Thinking of this, Xingchen got up and prepared, and then went to the service desk to check out. The purchase process was similar to usual, but this time the receptionist named Lin Ping didn't send another box of gifts to Xingchen. Probably that kind of gifts couldn't be sent back all the time, but Xingchen doesn't care about this. As long as the large box of spirit beast meat brought out by the other party is relatively fresh and of good quality, and when the time comes to supply it to Master Pa Fu, he will not be picky. Next, when he bought a small box of premium spirit beast meat, Xingchen specially bought 8 boxes of meat products, which was for more boxes besides the 4 boxes that the uncle might want to buy. What Xingchen thought was that for this matter, the instructors would probably find a few more people to fill in the show. It was all human relations, so he naturally had to prepare some gifts to send back to show his affection. In addition to the small box of spirit beast meat, I also bought a few more boxes of that kind of spirit tea, and the same is true for spirit fruits. I needed to buy a few more boxes. After buying these things, Xingchen returned the goods to the spaceship, and began to load them on the spaceship one by one. Of course, most of the more important goods were loaded into the space of rhubarb, but this time there were more than 10 boxes of goods bought, so the spaceship also took up some space, and now Stardust could only stay on the control chair. But there is no difference. Stardust stayed still like this during the voyage before. After more than 10 hours of sailing, Stardust returned to Staramaya. This time he did not return directly to the Budokan, but sent a message to Pa Fu first. It should be daytime at the Budokan, but it didn't disturb the uncle's sleep time. Xingchen's approach meant being cautious, but the uncle told him to go back to the martial arts hall directly, and the matter has been resolved. Worrying for nothing. Since the uncle said it's okay, let's go back. Stardust's spaceship stopped in the open space of the dormitory area after more than 20 minutes. After a while, Uncle Pa Fu also drove over. Then it's time for delivery. The goods prepared for the uncle this time are the same as the previous ones. The uncle wanted to wrap up the 8 boxes of high-quality spirit beast meat, but I heard that Xingchen bought more to return favors, so he only took 4 boxes. As for the spiritual tea and spiritual fruit, the quantity is the same as usual. The uncle paid the bill according to the amount, and Xingchen earned another 80 million lars. Just after the transaction here was completed, Instructor Dika also walked out of the dormitory. Instructor Dika saw that Xingchen came back, and Pa Fu was also here, so he happened to tell Xingchen what happened before. Next, Instructor Dika and Uncle Pa Fu recounted everything that happened during the negotiation. Since Stardust set off to buy goods, Instructor Dika and Master Pa Fu made an appointment with people from the Ma tribe to negotiate. The Ma tribe came forward, and the 3 of them came together with Ma Han. On the Budokan side were Uncle Pa Fu, Instructor Dika, Instructor Killen, and 2 other middle-aged instructors who were working. These 2 instructors, Xingchen, have also met each other, and they were both the instructors who led the team to dig the vine treasure last time. According to the strength of the 2 parties, the opponent is a prefecture level 6th level and to 5th level, and Ma Han, a rookie who has just broken through the 4th level. There is the 6th rank 1 and the 5th rank 4 in the Budokan, but they are stronger than the other party. Of course, this negotiation is not going to start directly, and we still need to talk about it first. The agreed meeting point is in a store in the urban area, neither party's property, and it doesn't matter whose home field it is. As soon as the Ma tribe met, they asked for all the information about Xingchen going to an unknown planet. In addition, the Stardust Road is familiar with that planet, so the Ma tribe wanted to hire Xingqian to go together again. Anyway, the commission must be given according to his strength. With Stardust's strength, he could probably earn more than 1 million in just one trip. On behalf of Xingqian, Instructor Dika and Master Pa Fu directly rejected these proposals, and directly stated that everyone is not a fool. Don't use family power to suppress people. These materials are obtained by Budokan, and if you want it, you can get money to buy. Anyway, the price that Uncle Pa Fu called is not high. The whole set of materials only needs 10 million rals, and the Ma tribe can take it. In addition, Ma Han had to take out the 500,000 Montisa that Mayan had not paid before. The people from the Ma tribe were very annoyed when they heard these conditions, but the strength of the two sides is equal, and the Budokan still has the advantage, so it is impossible for the Ma tribe to use their strength to settle the situation. What followed was a war of words between the two sides plus various arm wrestling. In the end, the two sides reached a deal, and the Ma tribe paid 5.5 million rals, which means they bought this set of materials. The Budokan promised to keep the coordinate information of the unknown planet secret, at least not to leak it within 100 years. So far, the whole adventure has come to an end, and Stardust is at peace here. After saying this, Instructor Dika handed over the 5.5 million rals to Xingqian asking for flowers 0. This is not a small sum, directly doubling Xingqian's assets. However, several instructors have contributed a lot to this matter, so we can't let them play white tea. Xingqian then asked Instructor Dika what to do with the money and how much these instructors should get. However, Uncle Pa Fu and Instructor Dika unanimously stated that the incident this time was caused by the Budokan. Originally, Stardust ran this trip at the risk of his life, so it was appropriate to take the money. As for the remuneration of the instructors, there is no need for Xingqian to worry about it. It will be handled by the senior management of the Budokan. The instructors don't want to be paid here, so it's not easy for Stardust to force it. However, the few gifts I bought along the way this time can be given away. Xingqian said what he meant, and Instructor Dika nodded and said, I don't need to give it to Pa Fu. It's not bad. The two in-service instructors need to express that you give me 2 gifts. I'll pass it on for you. Asterisk 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 asterisk. Uncle Pa Fu also nodded when he heard this, saying that such an arrangement is better. However, Xingqian felt that Uncle Pa Fu wanted a gift, but he was embarrassed to ask for another gift because the Instructor Dika said so. So Xingqian still prepared a gift for Uncle Pa Fu and insisted on letting him taste it. After Master Pa Fu declined, he saw that Xingqian was more persistent, so he still accepted it. This kind of behavior also caused the Instructor Dika to roll his eyes. There is still one gift left by Xingqian, and there is no need for Instructor Dika to give it, but there is still Instructor Ranlin to give. Instructor Dika couldn't help Qi Lun to refuse, so he let Xingqian handle it by himself. There was nothing else to do after that. Xingqian continued to practice sword skills. Xingqian has no complaints about starting to practice immediately. All these are to enhance his own strength. It doesn't matter if it will be a little tiring. It will be safe to go out when he is stronger in the future. They are practicing here, and Instructor Qi Lun came back from outside. Instructor Qi Lun came here and was more happy to see Xingqian came back, but it was already afternoon, and Xingqian was still practicing sword skills, so he immediately expressed his dissatisfaction. According to the agreement between Instructor Dika and Instructor Kilin, Xingqian should practice agility in the afternoon, but it is obviously afternoon, but Xingqian is practicing saber techniques, which shouldn't be the case. Oh, there is such an agreement, but Xingqian just came back, but he didn't pay attention to it. Instructor Dika didn't say anything, he just let Xingqian start practicing swordsmanship. I don't know if it was intentional or not. Dust felt a little embarrassed.
Thank you for watching Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share and subscribe. Have a great day.